Welcome back to the High School Bekius program. Today we're doing Chav Zayin Amud Aleph and Moed Katan. Today's Gemara has three main topics. The first one is about overturning the beds, the Kfiyat Hamita that the mourners do. And the question is, when does it begin? There's a machlokas if it's from when the deceased leaves the house or only after the burial. Friday afternoon, already from Mincha time, they're allowed to turn the beds upright. And Motzi Shabbos, they have to return them to make them overturned. And this includes all the regular beds in the house, not storage beds or a dargash. The Gemara is going to explain what that's about. There's another halacha about not bringing spices and nice smells in the mourner's house, in the mourner's room, or in the room where the comforters come, the menachmim. You're allowed to put those besamim. And then when there's a Mishnah about delivering food to the mourner, they should not do it in particularly nice trays and bowls and baskets, not to embarrass the poor people. The Gemara begins. When does the halacha of having to overturn the beds begin? It begins from when the coffin leaves the house, according to Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Shua says not only from the time of the finishing of the burial. Rabbi Gamliel passed away, and Rabbi Eliezer came and informed the family, you should overturn your beds right now after they took the coffin out of the house. And then, later when they finished the burial, you should overturn your beds. We already did it because Rabbi Eliezer told us to overturn beds earlier. So you see in that story, they followed Rabbi Eliezer. When is the obligation of returning the beds pushed aside because of Shabbos, and you're allowed to turn them upright from Mincha time and on? Nonetheless, they can't actually sit on until sunset when Shabbos actually begins. Then there's no mourning on Shabbos for public things, so they're allowed to sit on a normal chair on Shabbos and overturn the beds normally. Moed Shabbos, aval pisha ein lo leishiv elo yom echad. On Moed Shabbos, they have to overturn the beds back to the way they were during morning, even if there's only one more day left of the morning. Doesn't matter. For any amount of time, they have to overturn them. A person has to overturn all the beds in the house, not just the ones they're sleeping on, but all the beds. Even if they have 10 beds in 10 places, still, they're still going to overturn all of them. Even 5 brothers and one of them passed away, all of them have to overturn their beds. If there's a storage bed that they put utensils on, it does not need to be overturned. You could turn a dargash upright, but it does not need to be overturned. The dargash, you untie one of the strings and let the loops and everything, the hide that's holding it up, fall to the ground instead of overturning it. My dargash, what is this type of bed? Amr Ula Arsa Degada. It is a mazel bed they would keep just for good skula, that it would look nice and it would make have an ayin tov in the house. Amrle Rabba El Miata Gabi Melch did not call Am Suman al Aretz who misav al dargash Mika Midi Dada Inno Lo Tvina Vahashim Motvina Light. Rabbi says, I don't understand. You're telling me that the dargash is this fancy bed that's used for skula and nobody sits on, and the king, we say, when it comes to mourning, usually everybody is sitting on the ground, and when the king is in mourning, everybody's going to be comforting him, sitting on the ground, and he's sitting a little bit above them on this dargash. So it doesn't look like disrespectful to the king, even though he's in mourning, so he sits a little bit raised up, but not in his regular place. Wait a minute. You're telling me, usually ad ha'ina, until today, Lo Tfina, we never sat him on this dargash. He never sat there. This is an abnormal thing. He usually sits on a normal chair, and now Hashta, today, Motivina, now we're going to let him sit on the dargash. If the dargash is a special chair used for mazel and never for sitting, well then why, when the king is mourning, all the time we let him sit on that? That doesn't make any sense. So therefore you see from that Mishnah that the dargash was used by the king as a special chair to sit on. It's not obviously the same thing as this mazel chair. And the Gemara answers, Makila Ravashi. Ravashi challenges that question. My kosher, why is that even a question? He says, wait a minute. This should be similar to the idea of giving food and drink. And until now, nobody gives the king foods and drink. It's not respectful to do that. And all of a sudden today, when he's a mourner, today we're doing that. So obviously we break the regular practices, and same thing over here. The king usually doesn't sit on a dargash, but okay, today you're allowed to do that because of mourning. It doesn't break the rules of mourning, which is something out of the ordinary, in order to show he's mourning, but yet his honor is raised above other people. But it could still mean a mazel bet. Eli kasha, hakasha. If you want to know what the question we have on the definition we gave, it's the following. The Brisa told us in the Tanakh you don't need to overturn the Dargash al-Zokvo, you just make it upright. Why is it true that the Dargash does not need to be overturned? You need to overturn all the beds in your house, as the Brisa tells us. If you have 10 of them, you have to overturn all of them. So why does this mazel one not need to get overturned? Where says that we can also answer. My kasha. Maybe let it say there's a functional bed, just like we have the storage bed does not need to be overturned. So to the dargash does not need to be overturned. Didn't Tanya? It says in the Brisa, you don't have to overturn the storage bed. Ali kasha hakasha. We have another third question. Dargash mater karvita. You untie the strings and it falls on its own. If we're talking about a mazel bed, well, it's a regular bed. It's just used for mazel. Well, then what are we talking about having strings and having it fall to the ground? Says the Gemara, Ravin says he heard from Ravin came and he was told by one of the rabbis, Rav Tachlifa was his name, to have Ishchia b'shukah de Golda. He was common in regular in the leather markets, my dargash, and he knew what this dargash was. Arza de Sala. It was a leather bed, and we'll describe it now a little bit further. Imar Nami, Amr of Yirmi Dargash, Rugo Mitocho. The loops that held up the hide of the bed of the dargash went through the holes inside the frame of the bed, level with the bed, to hold up the bed frame. And if you untie one of the strings, it would fall. Mita, a regular bed, however, is made a little differently. Siruga al Gaba, the bindings, the strings that hold it up, were placed over the frame of the bed to hold it up a little bit higher. But that supports the point of the fact that it was made out of leather. It was a little bit different, and that's what Rosh Spag was talking about before, that if you untie one of the strings, it collapses on its own, and therefore it doesn't need regular overturning. Amar Rebbe Yaakov Barach, Amar Rebbe Shimon Levi Halacha, Rebbe Shimon Gamliel. We follow Rebbe Shimon Gamliel that the dargash does not need to be overturned, just on strings untied. Amar Rebbe Yaakov Barach, Amar Rav Asi Mita Shenekalita Yotin Zok Vevidayo. If you have a bed with the post outstretched coming out on top, so a two-poster bed where it's really impossible to overturn, because the posts are extending from on top, from each side, the head and the head and the foot of the bed. So it was impossible to overturn it. So that's just enough if you make it upright, make it stand up straight, that abnormal, that's fine. If somebody decides to sleep on chairs or on a mortar or on the ground, they don't fulfill their obligation. What obligation? They didn't fulfill the obligation to overturn the bed. Overturning the bed means overturning the bed, and then sleeping on an overturned, funny sort of bed doesn't mean sleeping on the floor. And definitely means overturning the bed, not just sleeping in a funny way. It also has to mean overturning the bed. That's for sure what we're talking about. You're allowed to sweep and clean the floors. You're allowed to clean the dishes and cups and the forks and containers for drinks. The ein mevi'in et mugmar. All those are necessary things to make the house function, but you're not allowed to bring spice to make it smell nice. And it was some bit of not mugmar, not incense or nice smells to the mourner's house. Any is that true? About Rav Tani bar Tachlifa in log mugmar v'lo b'sam bit avel. You don't make a bracha when you smell nice smells in the avel's house. Because it's just to get rid of the unpleasant odor. But you say we don't make a bracha. You're allowed to bring it there. Says the Gemara, no. In the room where the mourner lives, then you don't bring spices because it's not appropriate for the time of sadness. However, Menachem, where the mourner is comforted by the comforters, that room can have spices. They're not supposed to deliver food to the house of the Avel, not with a tray, not with a large tray, not with a skutula, another large tray, kanon, or a nice fruit basket, any of these platters, and rather besalim, a plain basket. Not fancy trays, not fancy baskets, rather a plain basket. In Omrim Birkat Avelim, the Moed, you're not allowed to bless the mourner after the funeral. Aval Omdim Beshura, you can have a comfort in the mourner very quickly in a line, the comforters line up. You can do that on the Chol Moed. Menachem and Apotrin had to rab him, and then they comfort him, and he exempts him. And the comforters in the public leave. And they don't leave the bed in the street for a long time, so not to make eulogies, because they shouldn't be eulogies generally on Chol Moed. Lo shal mashim lo olam. They don't leave the coffin out of the woman for long, out of cover. That it shouldn't be zion to the mace that's not buried for a while. Usually, originally what happened, the practice was that the rich people would deliver food to the Avel's house for the Sudas Havra in fancy silver and gold platters. Yaniyim Besale in the Sarim, they used to bring wicker baskets, the poor people, because they couldn't afford anything else. Ha'eshel Reva of reeds, Kalufa, that was peeled reeds, junky stuff. And the poor people were terribly embarrassed because it was all public, everybody saw what they were bringing to the mourner's house. Everybody decided from now on, everybody's bringing in plain wicker baskets, shalareva or reed baskets, kalufa, that's peeled reeds. Not to embarrass the poor. It used to be that in the mourner's house, the rich would bring drinks in white glass, clear glass, and the poor in clouded or colored glass. Again, the poor were embarrassing, and then they made it to everybody should do in the clouded and colored glass, because that's what the poor could do. It used to be they'd uncover the deceased rich people and cover those of the poor, because they would look unsightly because of the famine or malnutrition. Their face would turn colors. It was terribly embarrassing to the families of the poor. They never uncover them because of that. As a takana, as good enactment. Not to embarrass the poor. They used to take out the rich with the fancy chair, the dargash that we described before, the arsa the salad, the leather chair, and aniyah, the kilcha, a plain bed for the coffin to go upon. It was embarrassing to the aniyim. And out of the embarrassment of the poor, they decided from now on they're taking out the dead on a plain old bed for a beer for the coffin to come on. That's not going to embarrass the poor. The words are Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, or Ditnan, as we learned in the Mishnah. Ika is there is, and Tani, as we learned in a Brisa.